Thank you very much for joining us here on the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark Anthony Dyson, your host. Of course, I am ready to party with information on this Halloween hour. Hopefully, you're enjoying this day. And originally, I was going to have everybody come in mass, but I'm afraid that might freak LinkedIn out and they might kick us out. So I didn't do that. And instead, we're just going to try to have a little bit of fun by answering some questions that I see across my timeline and pass the rest of you see across yours. First of all, we'll do some introductions. We have Virginia Franco of Virginia Franco Resumes. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. She's in the lower corner. I don't know if anybody, I don't think anybody has their name up. I don't know why it didn't appear there, but
I
we'll do
see
that
mine.
anyway.
That's weird.
Oh, do you see yours? Okay. All right.
hmm
Well, yeah, I
I'll see
think
mine.
that, okay. And then next is Marie Zimenoff, and a lot of us know her as the leader of Cool Thought Leaders, and of course, she has her own practice. She's around the globe, and I'm surprised she's not globetrotting. Why are you globetrotting here, Marie?
I globetrot tomorrow, although I actually get to drive
Ah,
where I'm going. So it's good to be
okay.
here in my own office.
Yeah, I know. Every other week you're going somewhere. We're grateful to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. It is an honor to have all three of you. And thirdly, I had back Gina Riley, who joined me a couple of weeks ago on the call. A lot of you heard her on the podcast as well. How are you, Gina?
Awesome. Awesome. That was a great conversation. It's inspired me to write an article, actually. So,
Good deal. And I
too.
don't know why I don't have your lower third. I'm so embarrassed. Here you are. There you are. There's your lower third. Yes, I want to be sure to get everybody in. I exclude no one. But hopefully, if you have any questions in the chat, that you'll join us. I think there might be people who are already starting. I thank you very much, Marie, for putting that message. Sometime during all the text, if I didn't get a chance to write in the chat. Hopefully, if you're joining us from anywhere, let us know where you're from and who you are. And happy Halloween to all of you, and happy Halloween to my panel here. And I've done a bunch of these, so this is one of the few things in life I've actually mastered. I just haven't mastered all of the tech yet, as you could probably tell. If I'm lagging a little bit behind, it's all because I don't know why I'm lagging behind. It's almost never, it's just never happened. But let's go ahead and begin our topics. Topic number one. There's a lot of talk about internship programs, and that's been happening for a while. And a lot of universities have already started. I think Amazon used to have one. I don't know if they have one now. I think they do. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's one of the big companies that have it. And I don't think it's just the big companies that are doing them, but a lot of companies that find it useful to especially bring back not only those that have returned from like pregnancy leave or some kind of leave, but also people who've been boomeranging and have come back to the company. And you guys can update me on if you notice that in your practices. But what do you think of the returnship programs, and are you finding it helpful, or are your clients finding it helpful to have that kind of program? I'm going to start with Gina Riley first.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm not seeing with my clients that they're targeting former employers at this point. But what I do think is interesting about this as a potential trend is companies are struggling to find the right kind of people. It's not that there
Okay.
aren't people out there, it's the right people. And part of that pool of people that are the right people are people that already understand that company culture and the inner workings and the politicking and the way things operate. So it's a really viable pool of people for a company to intentionally target because they're already going to have they're going to hit the ground running understanding that culture. What I think companies will be challenged to do is to create intentional programs that help upskill to get people returning back to their workforce because as we all know technology moves really fast and there's different trends that we're all struggling with that as we work. If they can upskill people as they come in and then help those people hit the ground running, that would save them so much time and money rather than just recruiting from scratch.
Great points, Marie.
I think we're talking about maybe two different things here. So, returnships are oftentimes programs that companies have, not necessarily to recruit people back that they laid off, but to recruit people that have been out of the workforce for a while. I'm
Right.
excited about some of the stuff I see, people who've been justice involved, and companies are getting more engaged with that population, as well as people that have been at home. And then the boomerang employees are the ones that people have laid off and then they're asking them to come back. And I mentioned in a post that Salesforce, I don't know if any of you saw this, but Salesforce posted that they hope to hire back some of the employees that they're got 3,000 open positions. And I agree that's a great thing to do. As a candidate, I wonder, how do you make sure that if you do go back, you're not going to end up in the same situation? So I think that's something we could talk about for those boomerang employees. How do they make sure they don't go back and then 2 months later they're in the same shoes?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were during COVID got one of the things I understood was a lot of people during COVID had to take off time because they did get sick and it was too long and they couldn't return. There were some disability. There have been all kinds of reasons, but and I don't think it was just one, but it is interesting that if you're there for a while, you'd say, oh, this is why I left. But at the same time, I think it might have been smart for a lot of people to return if they were doing also the whole great resignation thing where they left and they might have left in a way that was at least dignified and respectable to both parties and were able to return because in certain industries there is people have made U-turns. I've known a couple of people who made U-turns. I don't know all the details, but yeah, that becomes a pretty interesting dynamic. Virginia?
So I love the idea of returnships. They're grown up internships. I was actually doing a little bit of research, and it looks like Salesforce does offer returnships. It also seemed like, from what I saw, it's mostly large companies, but it represents tech, some of the retail giants like the Amazon, also some of the top tier consulting and financial services companies. I thought that was exciting. I feel like it's a great way for candidates to test the waters, as it's been a long time since they've work to build out their network, to close gaps on skills. But what I think is important for people who participate in returnship programs to keep in mind is that there's no guarantee that you will get the job afterwards. Sometimes the pay is good, sometimes it's not as good. And if you are, and I would also caution people to continue job searching during that time because again, there is no guarantee. So just go at it with your eyes open. And if you are targeting a role outside of the big corporate giants, then returnships might not work for you because it doesn't seem like smaller startups, that kind of group, have those sorts of programs that are official in place.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people, well, I think there are people, you would think that people are on LinkedIn, maybe they can do the search and kind of understand what they might possibly get into. On the other hand, it's not just those who have even left the job. Some people taking long tenures, even up to 9 months, and they have, some companies have formed programs for those kind of people as well. So that's kind of good thing, but it kind of also highlights support is that should I need a soft landing, so to speak, and I want to go back to the company I was with without so many barriers, maybe I can land there. But it's good to do the research and find out that company has and dig into, of course, always do so cautiously, especially to a new company or to an employer that you've worked for before. We all know those. And I'll go on. I just want your thoughts for that. If you guys don't have any other additions to that discussion.
I've got a quick one. I think that there's a real opportunity for groups out there to create ways for people to come together and learn how to position themselves for these kinds of opportunities. So low hanging fruit is the returning to work parent, the returning to the mother that's been out of the workforce for a while. So there could be a real,
Mhm.
there could be a business opportunity, but there's certainly opportunities within those communities like moms in tech and whatnot to be creating programming that would help their membership potentially align with that returning to work opportunity.
Absolutely. Great point, Gina. Thank you very much. let's move on. I do want to get your take. I'm gonna sometimes I tend to skip around. I'm not going in the order that we had in the chat. So mind you, don't mind me. But I do want to get into the whole idea of older employees returning to the workforce because I think that's a pretty big one for a lot of you who might be working with older employees and older workers. And I noticed as I did Google searches on all of the search engines that there's a lot of talk about companies saying, hey, at least from the news point and reporting part, that yeah, hire these older employees, but I don't hear companies or a lot of companies or even people bragging about returning to the workforce after being retired in a while. I thought that was interesting, but maybe I might be wrong. I know in certain sectors that they are actually return to the workforce, many of them not to their own industries. Retail is not having the big boom as everybody thought they were going to have that September surge. That didn't particularly happen. But all in all, to say, I want to hear what you guys, as current career practitioners who take clients and talk to clients weekly and have the regular flow of clients, how is that going for older workers, and what strategies and things are you seeing to help them move along? I'm going to start with Marie this time.
Yeah, so this is always an interesting topic because what we're seeing with older workers, at least in my colleague group, is many of them coming back into non full time roles. So whether that's
Mhm.
consultant or part time or starting their own business, they're coming back in those non traditional types of, not non traditional, I don't know what the right word is. They're coming back in non full time roles in a lot of places
Mhm.
and then figuring out how to build their background in a way that positions them for that, which is pretty exciting because you can do it in the way you want to do it. But it's also has that the downsides of being able to manage it yourself. Sometimes that taking a step back is not as much as do people hire me to do that as can I do it in my own ego? Not ego in a bad
Mhm.
way, but you're used to being in charge of a lot. You're used to being very involved. And how do you manage that yourself, your own boundaries, in addition to finding work that has a different type of boundary? But we're seeing fractional, we're seeing a lot of words that are being used to bring those folks back into the workforce, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. They're more or less stepping stone opportunities, so to speak. But you're saying that people are leveraging using one step to actually, or eventually take another step. Are they, and Maria, I just want to ask you as well, do you feel like they are they're going to something that's a little bit more interesting or closer to their heart, something more purposeful and meaningful personally than just trying to get the job or trying to build back the opportunities they once had?
Really depends. I mean, you've got job seekers that have the financial means to do that, and you've got job seekers that don't, especially with the economy and COVID and all of those things. You're seeing them leverage their existing skills so that they can demand the highest dollar as a consultant or whatever it might be. You're also going to get a little bit more flexibility and those types of things when you leverage a skill you already have versus stepping into something new. It depends a lot on why the person is coming back, what is driving that. For some people, it's money. And there's
Mhm.
actually a study by Benchmark, some financial organization just put out a study that 1 in 6 workers are returning to the workforce, and a lot of that's financial. So you're probably seeing them maybe going to do something they like more, but maybe leveraging those skills so that they can command the highest dollar and make up that financial gap they're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Virginia, what have you been seeing,
So,
experiencing?
yeah, so like Marie, I do feel like there's people piecing together a new normal, which might mean a part-time job together with volunteer work, or maybe a small consultancy together with something else. But uh, since I focus mostly on the writing of the career marketing collateral, the resumes, LinkedIn profiles, I take a step back and I like to think about what are the biases against older workers and try to combat that in my marketing material. So the two biases that I've seen across baby boomers and then older Gen Xers is that number one, they're not tech savvy. Number two, they are resistant to change. And number three, they think they know it all and don't play as well with others. And so there are certainly things that you can do to combat those biases right off the bat. You can immediately show examples in your documents of pivoting, adapting, not being resistant to change. You can showcase technology that's relevant to the role directly in your documents. And then
Mm.
the way you show that you play well with others is you show examples of collaborations and partnerships. You balance
Mm.
that with I led this achievement, and you might have one of those, and the next one is partnered with this, that, and the other to achieve this. And then you focus on the work that's relevant in terms of giving a lot of detail.
So ultimately, and maybe Gina, you can change the narrative right here. Like I said, I've seen more articles saying hire these people than companies saying that they're hiring people. So you guys confirm that we're seeing a lot of information. And I think I've seen some posts and I've seen some recruiters say yes, and they're leaning into their 20 plus years of service and all this experience. And I understand there's a difference in different sectors. I think those who are executives have a little bit more opportunities and exposure than those who are not, and those who've been in mid management and had to retire because of COVID reasons, some other reasons. Gina, maybe you could shed some different light on it.
Sure. At the executive level or the senior level, and it's someone returning to work after a gap, there's a couple of words that come to mind. And one is confidence and humility, these two words that need to be embodied in the person seeking out the opportunities. One is not to get down on themselves that they had a break, but to
Hmm.
really lean into the storytelling that they have about their value that they can bring to any given opportunity. But then the other is it's a little bit of executive presence, having that humility and being able to read the room and being able to moderate how they're communicating with people, because a lot of the decision makers at this point are going to be younger. And so relating to a different generation is something that's a key strategy, I think, as people contemplating that reentry. What I have seen is people wanting to reenter, but they don't want to take on that big job again. They don't want to be the global of whatever their functional expertise is. And so it's the challenge is scoping it back to really figuring out what is your target? What do you really want to do? What's going to make you want to get up every day and go do that? And then socializing that with your network the best that you can initially, the people that already know you. But another strategy that I've seen some of my clients engage with is going to conferences, because you got to meet people so you can inform your own process. You may think you want a certain target, but then maybe you don't once you start uncovering what's really involved. So those are a couple things that I have on my mind about returning.
You used a great word. A couple of those words are humility. That's something that I really don't hear a lot of. Probably it's the first time I've heard that in some years. I think a lot of that was talked about back in 2011, 2012, when we were just coming out of the recession. There was residual, and people who were older workers were returning to the retail jobs. You remember that? They were starting to take the job from the teens because they had been out of work for so long. And we could get to that part here in a second. But pretty much I'm hearing the same, but I think the humility part is a big deal, and not just exclusive to executives, but those who actually maybe get in the job and find out that they're doing a little bit more reporting to their younger coworkers. Their mentors are a lot younger, and they have all this experience. And can I keep my mouth shut for a while and learn some things? Does that resonate with any of you?
It resonates with me, and it's similar to what Virginia was saying, is like balancing the taking ownership for what you've accomplished as maybe a leader or on your own as an individual contributor, but balancing that with that my team executed on something. And so that's a way you can
Mhm.
smooth out saying I all the time. However, I do find that older workers will downplay their past success and not have, and they lose the confidence about what made them awesome in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah. In some cases, they probably had to, because I know of someone who actually returned to a job after having had management experience for years. And pretty much anything that had to do with leadership, all the discussion that he was having start to turn the other way. In other words, he was given a set of questions about you're supposed to interview each person. He was supposed to interview his boss. And then he went and interviewed his boss. And one of the questions was, how did you get to where you are? And his boss told him, say, oh, I'm not going to go there with you right now. Oh, wow. That was the right swing, right? So all that to say is that, and this should not only shut him off, but yeah, I eventually left that job, and that kind of set the pace. And I'm not saying that's across the board, but those are the kinds of subtle things that people confront in their going back to or going to a job where they feel like they can function. I don't know if you've had more stories like that, Marie, but it's out there. And that's to say that I don't think it's all the way across the board, but it seems to be more individualized as I hear companies, or at least people advocating for companies to bring older workers to work or bring them back to work.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how it really hasn't shifted. So we started talking about this at our trend events 5, 6 years ago, the
Mhm.
silver tsunami, what's going to happen when there's all these older workers. And I thought at some point it just there won't be older workers because most people will be older workers. And I
Right.
wonder when or if that will happen. The silver tsunami, of course, is people retiring, which I also don't see happening. There was just a recent article on that. And I just don't see that happening. I started in the career space around 2008. And
Mhm.
then they were talking about the silver tsunami then. And we're still talking about it and it still
Yeah,
hasn't happened.
I
Yeah, pretty much the same. And it's spoken with some vigor of hope in the sense that you have people who were hired, and this time you think will come back, and they saw the exiting of a lot of younger workers, so they thought maybe they can fill those kind of gaps, but apparently not as much. You seeing the same thing, Virginia?
Yeah, it's a real missed opportunity with all of the discussion in the past few years about enhancing diversity, that multi-generational diversity isn't something that people consider. And
Right.
I was thinking about Gina's point about humility. Where I've seen people struggle is with the networking piece. I've worked with older workers that say my network's aged out. I don't really have one anymore. And you have to wallow some ego to reach out to younger former folks from your alma mater and do the outreach on LinkedIn and start having conversations with people that you probably felt like you ran circles around years ago. But that's the way you job search isn't any different, whether you're 22 or 62.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
requires you to speak with a variety of people, and in this case, it'll probably be younger people.
Yeah. I just wonder if we include the older workers in that discussion with people who are underemployed. And that's something I've talked about in the past, where people are taking jobs that are low ceiling, low hanging fruit, so to speak, that they know that they can get. And I wonder if, I don't know, you guys have the answer or thought about if older workers can take more of those, although there's the salary issues, there's the benefit issues, and all of those things. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of people have actually found some solace and some relief in the underemployment aspect, and use that more or less of the stepping stone for them to get back into the workforce. And I've heard the word unretirement being thrown around a lot. I think all of you are familiar with Carrie Hannon, who's been writing articles in Yahoo Finance, who's written a lot about retirement, how people are coming from those ranks and starting to look at the different options. And like I said, I have yet to see where a lot of the options actually are being touted amongst those who are continuing to work. Going to be returning to that subject in other episodes, but I'd like to continue to watch that because there's a lot of people who are older people who are interested in going to work and flushing off the nerves. Can they return to something that's somewhat fulfilling and even promising going forward. There was a note I have here. I'm going to go to the other question until I find my note on that particular one. But there's the idea of people who are long-term unemployed. And there's some studies to show that there are people who have been unemployed more than a year, especially those who were including in HR fields from last year. They're still finding it a little bit hard to return. Is there Are there things, and we could talk about a couple of things that maybe you recommend for those who've been unemployed for more than 6 months, even a year and 2 years, I've even seen recently. Still, even after getting laid off with COVID, or maybe they left voluntarily. Virginia.
Other than network, I love how you added that to the
Yes,
question. Yeah.
thank you. Other than that,
Other than
because
networking, yeah.
everybody's doing
Network,
that.
network.
I think people watching get that part of it.
Yeah.
So let's try to build from there.
To the biggest piece of advice that I have read and seen that's been helpful is to do whatever you can to account for that gap. Whether it's they decided to take some time to renovate your house, do some travel, learn a skill, maybe lend your wisdom pro bono, fill the gap, show how it has made you how it has kept you well equipped to hit the ground running in your next role. It's unfortunately long-term unemployed carries the same stigma that a house that's been on the market too long. Nothing's wrong with it, but people have there's lots of questions that it raises, and you need to address the questions by having something to show for the gap.
Yeah. Okay. Marie?
So it's not only just something to show for the gap, but it's that way that you stay plugged in, and you want to get plugged in however you can. And that's not just for your resume, but it's for your mental health. So a lot of research on long-term unemployment has shown that employers might be biased, but that people actually show up differently when they are long-term unemployed. And so it's this bad storm of the two forces that, yes, there's bias, but you also show up differently when you've been unemployed, because we tend to we don't have energy. We're not showing up. We're not engaged with people. And so whatever you can do, volunteer, all the things that Virginia was talking about for yourself, not just to fill a gap, but to stay invigorated with your work. Join classes, do whatever you can, and not just asynchronous, but find ways to get engaged with people. Gina, earlier you were talking about professional associations. Now everything is virtual. There's really not an excuse to not show up to some of those things. Meetups are going again. There's just so many opportunities, but I'd say get out there virtually or in person and start engaging with people in the industry you want to be in and in the industry you are in or want to be in. And the one thing that I always say, and Hannah Morgan and I are on this bench together, get into some kind of professional group that's virtual. Facebook groups are the least utilized resource
Yeah.
I've ever seen in job search. I don't know why we just don't think that people should be doing that, but it's huge. There are so many opportunities in Facebook groups to get connected. And then also Slack or Discord or whatever it is, find out where your people are and start hanging out there so that you can have that peak of your industry and the energy and the networking.
Okay. Gina?
When Marie was talking about showing up with that confidence, my heart just hurt a little bit because I think we've all worked with people that are showing up with that lack of confidence, and then it's compounding, breaking through. And so it made me think about an adjacent thing that people could be doing, which is not just engaging with other professional communities, but maybe joining like a Toastmasters group where you have a chance to challenge yourself to continue to be speaking in front of people and to be thinking quickly and on the fly, or putting together different topics so that you can test your presence and you can test your ability to influence other people and to also gain feedback from other folks. So there are remedies to these challenges. And I love Marie's idea. The professional groups are really where you can lean in and collaborate. And sometimes other people will have opportunities that aren't suitable for them for whatever the reason. And you can do some sharing of information. So I think that being involved with other people is the number one thing that people need to be doing, whether we call it networking or whatever it is, not just being behind a screen and applying to jobs is that better route.
Yeah. I think there's still the stigma, isn't it, of employment bias. And we talked about on that last show, but it keeps coming up every time is that supposedly we see some talk of some new horizon only to see the same old sunset.
Yeah.
The idea that people they're hireable, they're willing to, and I think eventually people will in some industries in some kind of way do have to endure and do the work that they need to in order be to come from under the long-term employment tag. But all of that to say that I would think too that employers would have moved on from some of that, being that at some point they have hired people who have been long-term unemployed. It's not like the age bias that they may say, I won't be hiring any older workers because I have all these younger workers here and they just wouldn't fit. There'd be no way. This is a little bit different. There are people who are not, who are still younger. And when I say younger, younger than somebody considered older, they are still into the game, but it's a, sounds like to me that it's a presentation problem. Anyone, does that resonate with any of you?
It's a number of factors. Part of it is presentation, but what I've witnessed too is people not keeping at it, letting go of
Hmm.
consistently meeting with people. I'll meet with clients month after month to do those check ins, and I call it an accountability partner meeting. And I can tell you that many months will go by and they're just not doing it for whatever reason. But sometimes people need more than just the accountability partner or coach. Sometimes I've also met people that have needed more of a therapist as well. Looking at the whole
Mm.
person and looking at what those blockers are to success is, I think, something that shouldn't be understated. Another thing that came to mind as we were all chatting is the idea of transferable skills. I think that there's plenty of articles out there that we can all come up with that lobby to use your transferable skills and articulate your transferable skills. I would
Mhm.
caution that people need to be threading the transferable skills, oftentimes the soft skills, in how you're applying that for towards that job. And so that goes back to storytelling, how you present yourself, and doing that with confidence.
That's fair. Marie, want to chime in?
Oh, I hate the word transferable skills because it just sounds, it's always this very fluffy thing. Well, I'm a great communicator. When it comes right down to it, and I always say those are the icing on the cake, but you've got to have the cake. You have to have the hard skills. You have to align those hard skills to the job requirements, or nobody cares how great of a person you are. They want to, but when it comes
Right.
down to it, they need someone that can do the job. So you got to have the cake first, and then you can put those soft skills on as the icing. And what I hear from recruiters is that people are applying to jobs that they have no business applying, or they're not in any way connecting why they should be applying to that job. So then you get distraught because you're not hearing anything back. The reason you're not hearing anything back is because you're not applying to things that you're qualified for. So it creates this really bad spiral for people. And I think that's the one thing is to really look at those skills. And if you think you have those hard skills the job's looking for, you've got to be communicating it in your documents, in your profile. And if you're not, 75%, we always throw around numbers, that 75% of the qualifications comes from research DeVry did in 2015, that if you don't have around 75% of the qualifications or more, you're not going to hear back, especially if you're applying online. So that's one of those things I see that's keeping people in that negative spiral.
Yeah. And to those, I think we all seen the recent LinkedIn article where the people applying to 500 jobs a month and they haven't heard anything. Of course, that's probably attributed. I don't, can't say how many of those hundreds of jobs that may apply to where they apply to something that they are not qualified for, or they can't prove that they can do the job. And they end up with not a lot of traction because they're busy applying to things that they have no business. And we've all said that at one time or another, it's better to apply to 50 focus jobs a month as opposed to 500, where you absolutely have no chance because you could spend that time doing other things like all the things that Gina and Virginia talked about. Yeah, it's still a problem. And you can almost peel back some of those stats today and some of the narratives today and apply it to almost 15 years ago when I first came in to the career space where people are still doing the same things. They're not being targeted. They're not being specific. They're not having the right kind of conversations. They're not meeting the right kind of people. They're not surging in a way that is keeps moving the needle instead of trying to do what's quicker, faster, bigger, better to end up in the same place. Anybody want to add to that?
I'd love to add. What I also see is that people, many long time unemployed, are in industries that were hard hit, and because they have a myopic focus on needing to return to that area, it might take a while for that industry to recover. And
Mhm.
so I always encourage people to look to see, okay, this area did get hit, and maybe there is a sliver that is hiring that you wouldn't expect. Adam Broda today, he posted about how tech got hit very hard, but because of current events, aerospace and defense technology actually has a lot of, they're starting to hire. And so you would want to look for roles where, or start to network with people in at companies maybe where having that particular industry expertise is not a deal breaker,
Mhm.
and sort of consider angles that are beyond your original scope. Because the quickest way to land is in a role that is has a lot of relevancy to your old role. There's a lot of commonality.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. And I think not to use the term transferable skills, but I think when people when people try to think of what actually is a transfer, they do tend to reach for something that's easier and more tangible than to dig down into their experience to really learn where is the tie that binds them to that
Mhm.
particular job. We can all agree that yeah, there's a lot of work, but we don't want to discourage people either from continuing to dig to find commonalities. I think even when it refers to transferable, but maybe find those jobs or find the industries where they have a tie to as far as skills. I think a lot of people don't look at the wider spectrum. And we've all heard that, and I've said that even in the last podcast that there's there's tech needs in every industry. There are writing needs in every industry. There's training needs in every
Yeah.
industry, but they don't dig down to their particular skills to see how it may apply across the different industries. And I think
Mhm.
too, to what we've been talking about before, is that they need more exposures to what's possible. Some people find what's possible by accident, and that's really great. But at the same time, I think it's up to the individual to find out what's possible across all different industries. And it may take a college course or going back to your college alumni if you graduated from college or graduated from a tech school or somewhere where you did an apprentice and look to see where different people have gone. And people in in those career services that can tell you where people have gone in because a lot of them keep a track, at least statistically, if not by person, where people have gone to. And they may know that person, but even more important again, you know what the possibilities are. So we can move on from that if no one has anything else to add. And we'll hit up the fourth one with a little bit of caution. I know that I want to talk about how a little bit about severance pay and how that's going to, what you guys think that's going to look like here in the next 3 years. But I do get a feeling that to some degree, while we saw a lot of competitiveness when we had the mass layoffs in the tech industry, that a lot of industries may not be giving that severance pay so easily and not even maybe even offering severance pay at all, being that there are other things that are coming into play. So I sent you an article that was dated in February 2023, but I thought that's relevant because I'm just wondering in your view, and I'm asking you to look into your magic ball, do you see that potentially going away or that being restricted in some kind of way here in the future? And again, I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball and give me your thoughts with no particular scientific bearing, except Marie. Marie probably got stats waiting in
Yeah.
her pocket. So I'm going to start with Marie into what maybe your thoughts are.
Oh man. So I don't have any stats on severance. It's interesting the things that are going on in the legislature, just in general around business with the
Mhm.
non-competes and severance, and eventually for us small businesses, the 1099, the new regulations around contractors. It's just there. It's interesting, and it'll be something we all have to watch as the election for 2024 comes up. Will these things stay? Will they shift? I was excited to see the non-competes. I think that when you leave somewhere to be held to a non-compete, not be able to go to a new job, to be hindered in any way to get into a new job is not good for anyone. So I was excited about that. The severance piece, like you said, it goes up and down with the economy. I'm hearing, and I don't know if you're hearing this, that fewer companies are offering outplacement now too.
Yes.
Um, so
Yes.
I think some of those things aren't good for employees, and they indicate a little bit in the economic slowdown that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Gina?
So I am thinking that especially the people that I'm serving the executive level, that when leaders are landing that next position, that they should include with their salary negotiations exit packages for their own
Mhm.
protection, especially at that level, because sometimes they're leaving other opportunities on the table to put all their eggs in that basket. But for the masses that may get laid off or as the economy goes up and down, I do see that employers, if they're the ones holding the cards, they can certainly make decisions that are not helpful to those that they're releasing out into the workforce. And to Marie's point, it's not helpful to anyone to have those non-competes in place, because then you've got people out possibly having to go through unemployment, draining unemployment, and having to waste their time applying to things that they may not want, when we could really be generating a healthier economy, allowing them to go find suitable work elsewhere and get right back into drawing a paycheck.
Yeah. My friend Tom Spiegel, who's an attorney who deals a lot with the non-compete issues. And of course, a lot of them have been misused and abused and all that. I think that perhaps because there's going to be so much on the insurance side, perhaps the insurance companies will start to say, no, we won't be able to handle that particular piece of business because yeah, the company blew it, but they're going to start saying, no, we can't insure you. Is what some doctors are going through. Is that there's already so much malpractice that some companies and some insurance companies can actually have because they can become quite lucrative in favor against the company. Virginia?
I was actually trying to understand the impact of the legislation on job seekers, and from what I understood, that what the new regulations say, the companies can still hold you to an NDA where you can't disclose trade secrets and things like that, but you could it you that you would be allowed to share the details of your severance agreement with someone else, or and be able to maybe help a peer to decide if it's worth taking the package or not. That they were not able to restrict people against on that. That's the I found an article in CNN that was talking about that. But the one thing in terms of putting my looking into my magic 8 ball, was a comment that John Hyman that he shared, and he's pretty active on LinkedIn. He's a great follow. And he said, look, companies they're not legally required to give anyone severance. They don't do it
Right.
completely out of the goodness of their heart. It's a transactional thing. And so that people should not be surprised if at some point the severances get less generous, as job seekers or people that have been let go are required to do less, which I hope that's wrong.
I think it'll be a brand thing, right? If it's a brand, an employment brand who understands that for future talent, they're going to look at whether they are providing services or not. Of course, that could change. The game could change at any particular point. But I think
Mhm.
a lot of this is still an FTC recommendation where
That's what I
they're
was trying to
recommending.
figure out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was originally started out the end of the year, and I think around the time that the article was written, that there's a FTC regulation, or they're recommending, or potentially recommending. They haven't recommended even yet to abolish the whole idea of non-compete. But I can see that if it is very restricted, that companies will start to not offer that, as compared when a lot of people stop offering, then it no longer becomes a competitive issue. It becomes like we shouldn't expect it. And again, there's no state that regulates company to give separate. I just thought that was an interesting discussion to have at this particular point. Of course, I think we'll all watch, because I know you guys have clients that will also be impacted by that in some kind of way. Maybe Gina or your executive clients is going to be slightly a little bit different, but that's potentially that game might change too, depending upon
I think
the
that's something
market.
to be aware of. Yeah. I think it's a concern. And I have known people that have gone, I've known people long enough to where they've gone from one job and then to another a couple of years later. And when they made a mistake, not having some of those contractual things locked down, they learned a next one. And then when things came to pass in the next business, that at least they got a very healthy separation. So it gave them enough lead time to go search for the next executive level job, because it really can take 8, 12 months, sometimes longer. If you're replacing a CEO job, it can take 2 years because they're not falling off the trees. So it takes some time to go and manage that search through the network to uncover the opportunities.
Yeah, well, it does. It does. We come to near the top of the hour. We got a couple of minutes left. I just want to find out what each of you are up to and what you've got coming. Anybody's got Oprah coming to their house for an interview, or perhaps you're having a documentary done on your coaching practice. Feel free to share. I'll start with you, Virginia.
No Oprah, no documentary. I just put my head down and continue to work with new clients and returning clients.
Good deal. Gina?
Oh gosh, no, I also do not have a documentary in the queue, but I am very much at work preparing a presentation for the April 2024 Career Thought Leaders in Lisbon. And I'll be collaborating a little bit with the one and only Marie Zimnoff, who's right here. I'm very
wow.
excited, been doing a ton of research and getting ready for that.
Yeah, I won't make it to Portugal.
Dang it.
Yeah, yeah, that one went out of my radar. I'm going to the NCDA in San Diego,
Very
so I'm looking forward to that. Taking my wife, and we'll enjoy some sun together. Marie, you have anything? I know the Career Jam is coming up, and I know that's a big thing on your radar.
Yeah, Career Jam every year. We research trends and get people together to talk about what that means for careers. And then in January, we'll put out our white paper with the results of that event. And so I'm excited about that. It's one of my favorite events of the year. And yeah, just lots of things coming around, and more, as you said, more speaking engagements, although more virtual in the next few weeks. But I'm excited just to get to see people in person as much as possible, as well as virtually. So it's great to be here with you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And you were on my show back in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And you talked about the Career Gen findings. And I think it was in February 2015 or 16, one of those 2 years. And it's been a while. We've talked since then.
Yeah. This is our 14th year for Career Jam.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know. It's been a while. I have yet to participate in one of the live ones. Something always comes up. I'm getting ready to go to New York to see this, but leaving on Thursday. But that's nothing right out. The bigger thing that's on my radar right now, having Lee Branham and Mark Hirschfield who talked about their book about taking a job before you really need to, or looking into the job. It's a very cool book. I got a chance to be included in the book as on their expert panel, so I'm really excited to have them on. I've been reading Lee Brennan stuff for many years about employees leaving. He's done a number of studies about that. And you've probably seen his book on the bookshelf at one time or another. So I'm looking forward to having the both of them come on and talk, and we're going to have a short chat. But nevertheless, I'm going to end the show here. Thank you very much for joining me, Jenny Rowley, Zeninoff, Virginia Franco,
Thank
and the
you.
rest of you joining us on Peace in the Bottle of Love.